Dear viewers, welcome to our today's format visit, and at this point my very warm thanks for all your numerous letters, which of course also fill the show with a lot of life, and I am always very, very fulfilled to answer these questions. Today I would like to deal with a topic that a couple from Königshofen wrote to me. Welcome also Thomas, you and your dear wife. And you write as the first sentence, first of all, thank you very much for the open and honest information. Nice if the feedback is one of those, also together with my colleague Dr. Klinghardt. It is already so that I think you can move a lot if you share knowledge, because the knowledge makes you more aware in your dealings with life, of course. And in this sense it is also my own way that led me to this today, to face life with a greater respect and a greater attention. And what always amazes me very much, I am a doctor, I also went through a degree, but today I run a clinic for holistic medicine, and what amazes me very, very much is that I do not do the things that I have learned, which I could actually integrate into my daily life. And that this concept is so conclusive, that I know exactly that I never let it run into an increased blood pressure crisis, because I have blood pressure medication. I could use it now and I do it too, if need be. But that there is actually no alternative to nature, and that so much is possible. I can observe that every day, and of course also serve natural things, and now I am referring to your question, because it goes so far that you yourself and your wife are very concerned with health issues together. And that's good. Because of course we have to know today who we want to be tomorrow, and I think we all live in a different world than we did 100 years ago, and I can't emphasize enough how important the question of detoxification is. And that's your key, because you write that we keep pointing out that toxins, environmental toxins, have to be bound in our body, that they are in great contact, also in the development of an incredible number of diseases. But that you write that you have read a lot about zeolite, that you have used the most diverse offers, also through our colleagues, Professor Hecht, these many interesting videos, and yet ask yourself at this point how far zeolite can go. Because it is bound to aluminum in nature itself, but it can also be a burden on the body on the other hand, not just by the zeolite alone. And now I would like to go back a little bit at this point, because to answer this question in 3 words alone would perhaps not be fair to many people now, who do not know about zeolite. And that's why I would like to tell you that zeolite is of course one of the highest and most valuable minerals in the world or on Earth. That means that in this diversity, oxygen is actually only added to it, in its proportion. And with that, this zeolite, this earth rock, this silica, this silicic acid, of course it is not only in zeolite, it is also in quartz, it is in sand, it is in mountain crystal, but it is an incredibly high-quality rock, which, with a deficiency, if the human body suffers from this deficiency, then we can actually not measure it today, but we can recognize it. We can recognize it by the fragility of our own structures. Everywhere where structure is required, where bands, where vessels, where bones are, where fascia are, everywhere where the skin folds, where elasticity is lost, where growth disorders are present, regeneration processes are delayed, everywhere there is hair loss, for example, or wounds that do not close. Please always think of the silicic acid. And the silicic acid as such of course also occurs in different forms. That means we are talking here about the so-called monomer content of the silicic acid and the colloidal silica. This is a difference that Professor Hecht spoke of, the amorphous or polymorphous silica, and that is toxic for humans. That means we are talking about a form that in the colloidal form does not actually occur to us as a substance, but in the form of its anion and cation balance. That is why it is so important when you take in zeolite as a powder, for example, that you dissolve this zeolite as a powder in water and not stir it with a metal spoon, but always with plastic or wood, and then sip it in the moment in your mouth and then take the next sip, but not just swallow it at once. A part of it is absorbed by the mucous membrane, and that is the highest value, because the zeolite is made up of crystal structures and the human organism is an organism that is basically very, not merciless. Merciless is not the right word, but our body needs everything, all elements of the periodic table, all of them, in microstructures. This is how life has adapted and developed. And these crystal structures, these are real crystal grids. They contain high-quality minerals, magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium and iron. That means when this zeolite is dissolved and drunk in sips and in a form that is in the form of the colloidal silica, these ions are present. A person who wants to understand what life is, it actually just means that it is an exchange of anions and cations on an energetic level. And this silica has the task, or this zeolite has the task, now of course to supply the body with these ions, and thus it has a very strong influence on the great cellular ion balance. But on the other hand, and this binding ability, it exists in the intestine, it binds with or it absorbs, it binds bacterial toxins in the intestine, it binds cytokines. These are substances that can promote inflammation. It binds metals in the intestine, aluminum, heavy metals are bound, free radicals, metabolic end products, acids, and this happens exclusively in the intestine and is then excreted with the stool. This is the great value of the silicic acid, that it can perform these tasks for the human body without demineralizing it. That is the high value. And we say today that the moment I use zeolite, of course I not only have an effect on the binding ability, in the moment when I say I conduct, I bind, I detoxify the intestine. On the other hand, I have a great influence on the mineral balance of the organism. This is the basic requirement, because I only use the cell membranes and this anion, cation, the supply of potassium, sodium, and pump, which can also realize the life of an energetic cell. And I thus balance the great acid-base balance. These are elementary basic processes that life needs to do its own homework in every cell. An organism that consists of healthy cells, or an organ that consists of healthy cells and their cell metabolism, of course has a completely different power of performance in life, in aging. And in every package it says, don't use zeolite for more than 4 weeks. These are experiences that we cannot confirm today, because there is a certain caution in everything that means dealing with it. Of course, I am not allowed to take such a zeolite with my thyroid medication or with my heart medication. There should be 2 hours in between. But if I do the same thing in the morning and I don't get up in the morning and take zeolite, but I get up, I go to the toilet, but then I do mouth hygiene. And this mouth hygiene can be an oil pull, then a good toothbrushing, brushing your tongue, and drinking. Because the kidneys want to excrete now. This is the detoxification process. And after this whole procedure, you drink the zeolite. That's 3 grams of zeolite. They say about 5 to 6 grams a day. Zeolite would be a very optimal dose to support the body in terms of its detoxification. And a person who does not have regular morning bowel movements has to make sure that he has regular bowel movements every day through an intake or through lentils or through flaxseed bowls. That is of course a prerequisite. The whole thing must not remain in the intestine. And this zeolite is also used in the evening before you go to bed. The liver, which works at night, you know that by now, the liver works from 12 o'clock to the morning hours. There, the greatest detoxification performance in our body is in a high activity. And the body expects that in the morning you will help it to not only get rewarded for this work, but that it can also derive it. And of course the kidneys are responsible for that. And this zeolite has a very big effect at the moment. As I said, it is bound to aluminum in nature. It is highly milled. And what is connected to zeolite remains connected in the last instance and goes out with the stool. That means research has been done, and this research is 2012, for example. It was a very, very large study by Karagamtis. The name is not so easy for me to pronounce. But it has been proven that 45 or 43% of aluminum and lead was bound and thus excreted. Cadmium up to 41%. These study results are also found in the biological trace element research, which was then a little later used as a major study. The concentration of lead in the liver was bound by 89%. And what I find very interesting, also in the kidneys 51% and 78% in the bones. And that is so important. We are not talking about bone diseases at all. We are talking about bone demineralization. We are talking about preosteoporosis. We are talking about so many bone processes, and we see that the minerals or the toxic stress from which we know that cadmium is deposited in the bone, that lead is deposited in the bone. And these are essential things that we can use well as humans here. And of course, everything is not the same regionally. Where do we live? And yet an aluminum-containing rain is pouring down on us. And yet we are not talking about the quality of our air, our drinking water. And with that you can actually tolerate the high toxic stress that humans today have to tolerate, because he lives in a city, because he may also live within a flight path, because the highway is immediately next to his place. These are things where we have to open our eyes, and the medicine is also required to shape this process, please, and also to take it more and more seriously. This zeolite has such a blatantly high proportion of silicon that the aluminum is bound to this silicic acid at the last moment and is not released, and in this bound proportion is always excreted directly via the intestine. Therefore, this is only resolved in this direction, and the bioavailability is not given. This is very important to understand. And of course, there are also high-quality differences in the context of zeolite. I have been using Toxaprevent for many, many years. There are also other very high-quality products about BioPure and what they are all called. But you have to deal with this very, very individually. And at the moment, I think I was able to answer your question and, above all, give you a certain peace of mind. Paracelsus said at the time, the dose makes the poison. And at the moment we can't really make various things so absolute. People like us all live with aluminum loads, of course, but the body is well able to handle it. Not everyone gets sick. That's always the argument of the amalgam advocates, that not all people get sick. And you're probably right, not everyone gets sick. But it's good to take these things seriously, and it's good to understand these things. And actually, Professor Hecht said recently, I've been taking it for many, many years. He's well over 90 years old. And I myself always arrange it from Monday to Friday, so that the body can simply stay in its normal regulatory scheme at the other time. And not every day does it have to have everything we support it. I think compliance is better when you say Monday to Friday, and on the weekend you just think about nothing. And detoxification, in the sense of detoxification, not only to understand about zeolite, but also to support the kidneys, to support the lymphatic system, to support the liver, either in the context of a tea or high-quality plants, such as gold root for the kidneys or marigold for the liver. Or the Myosotis compositum from the company Heal as a better lymph drainage. These are all very important things. Detoxification doesn't just mean detoxifying the intestines. But always be aware that the liver is our most important detoxification organ, and it works at night. It is so important to take this zeolite in the evening so that this process is already bound at night, and of course in the morning to continue to stimulate the whole detoxification. And in the future he can only respond to this relief with a much higher regeneration power. Because you can't take the first step in medicine in the second form and what you want tomorrow. You have to create conditions for that first. And of course, it is very important that you recognize these things. And I may have brought a lot of things into play that you already know. I ask for understanding. But I am very grateful to know this zeolite, and I am very grateful to be able to create a good and new balance for the body on many levels. Yes, that should be it for today. I am a great admirer of Hans Kruppe, and I will give you a few more thoughts for next week. He wrote a beautiful poem. I stand up with the right foot, open the windows of my soul, bow down to everything that loves, turn my face to the sun, jump a few times over my shadow and just laugh me healthy. In this sense, I wish you all a wonderful next week, and I look forward to seeing you again next Sunday. Goodbye.